There's a lot to unpack right now if you're following the New England Patriots closely, especially with the draft getting closer and the front office clearly putting in serious work behind the scenes. What really stands out at this point isn't just who they might pick, but the pattern of who they're spending time with. Those top visits always tell a deeper story, and if you're paying attention, you can already see the blueprint forming for what this team is trying to become moving forward. When you look at the positions they're targeting, it lines up almost perfectly with what this roster actually needs. The offensive line has been a concern, there's no question about it, but the real spotlight right now feels like it's on the defensive edge. That pass rush room is going through a transformation, and not a small one either. Pieces have been moved, some players are no longer in the picture, and now it feels like the team is trying to rebuild that identity from the ground up. That alone makes the edge rusher position feel like the biggest priority heading into this draft. And it makes sense when you think about it. If you can't pressure the quarterback in today's game, you're already at a disadvantage. The Patriots seem to understand that, and the names they've been bringing in reflect a clear intention to fix that problem. You've got a mix of younger prospects and more experienced college players, and that balance is interesting. It suggests they're not just thinking long-term, they want someone who can step in and contribute right away. One of the more intriguing aspects of this process is how some lesser-known names are starting to gain attention. There are players who weren't heavily talked about earlier in the cycle, but now suddenly they're showing up in meetings with multiple teams, and that usually means something. It's not random. Teams don't invest time like that unless they see real potential. And sometimes, those are the guys who end up surprising everyone on draft night. At the same time, you can't ignore how the Patriots are evaluating other areas like wide receiver and safety. But there's a difference between evaluating and prioritizing. Just because they're meeting with players at those positions doesn't necessarily mean they're going to pull the trigger early. It could simply be due diligence, making sure they understand every option on the board. Still, when you combine all the information, the defensive front continues to stand out as the main focus. And then there's the conversation around fit. Not every talented player is the right fit for what this team is trying to build. That's where things get really interesting, especially when you start comparing current roster pieces with potential draft targets. The Patriots already have certain profiles at wide receiver, for example, and adding someone with a very similar skill set might not be the smartest move, even if that player had a strong college season. It's not just about talent, it's about how that talent fits into the system and complements what's already there. That's why some of the wide receiver discussions feel a bit complicated. On paper, there are prospects putting up impressive numbers, showing explosiveness and big playability. But when you dig deeper, you start to question whether that's actually what the team needs right now. There's already speed on the roster. There are already players who can stretch the field. What might be missing is refinement, route running, consistency. Those are the traits that turn a good receiver into a reliable one at the professional level. And that brings another layer to the whole situation: development. The Patriots seem to believe in developing the players they already have, especially younger ones who showed flashes but didn't fully break out yet. If that's the case, then using a high pick on a similar type of player might not align with that philosophy. Instead, it would make more sense to either go in a different direction or focus on positions where the need is more urgent and the impact can be immediate. All of this ties back into the bigger picture of where the team is heading. They're not just drafting for depth, they're trying to build a foundation that can compete sooner rather than later. With a young quarterback still on a rookie contract, this is a crucial window. Every decision matters more, every pick carries extra weight, and that's why the strategy behind these visits is so important to understand. As you keep digging deeper into the prospects the Patriots have been evaluating, the edge rusher conversation only gets more intense and, honestly, more fascinating. There's a clear sense that they're not just looking for depth pieces here. They're searching for someone who can truly change the dynamic of that defensive front. And when you start breaking down some of these names, you begin to understand why this position feels like the centerpiece of their entire draft strategy. Take a closer look at the production and physical profiles of some of these edge defenders, and you'll notice a pattern. Length, explosiveness, and the ability to win one-on-one matchups are being heavily prioritized. But what really stands out is how much value is being placed on players who have already shown they can produce at a high level against strong competition. That matters, especially when you're trying to project how quickly a player can transition to the next level. There's also an interesting mix between consistency and upside when evaluating these guys. Some prospects might not have the flashiest numbers every single season, but when you watch their tape, you see traits that translate. Others come in with impressive sack totals and highlight plays, but the question becomes whether they can maintain that level of performance against more complex offenses. That's the balance teams have to figure out, and it feels like the Patriots are doing their homework on both ends of that spectrum. What's really intriguing is how some of the less talked about players are starting to build momentum as the draft approaches. These are the kinds of prospects who might not dominate headlines, but internally, teams see something special. Whether it's their motor, their technique, or simply how they fit within a defensive scheme, they're earning attention in ways that don't always show up in mock drafts. And history has shown that those under-the-radar picks can end up being some of the most impactful. At the same time, the conversation shifts again when you circle back to the offensive side of the ball, especially the wide receiver room. There's a lot of debate about whether adding another receiver early actually makes sense for this team. On one hand, you can never have too many playmakers. On the other hand, roster construction isn't just about stacking talent, it's about balance and roles. And right now, the Patriots already have a group of receivers who bring similar attributes to the table. That's where the discussion around skill sets becomes critical. Speed is valuable, no doubt about it, but speed alone doesn't solve everything. The ability to run precise routes, create separation in tight coverage, and be reliable in key moments is what elevates a receiver's impact. If the team believes that the current group can still grow in those areas, then investing heavily in another player with a similar profile might not be the best allocation of resources. There's also a ripple effect to consider. Every move you make at one position impacts decisions at another. Bringing in a new wide receiver could potentially limit opportunities for players already on the roster, and that creates tough choices down the line. It's not just about who you add, it's about who you might eventually lose or push out of the rotation. That's why these decisions are rarely as straightforward as they seem from the outside. Meanwhile, the Patriots continue to explore other positions like safety and tight end, which adds even more layers to their draft approach. At tight end, for example, there's a sense that the team is still searching for a more consistent presence, someone who can contribute both as a receiver and a blocker. It's not necessarily the biggest need, but it's one of those areas where the right player could quietly make a significant difference. And when you zoom out and look at everything together, the strategy starts to feel more complete. This isn't a team throwing darts and hoping something sticks. There's a clear evaluation process happening, with attention being given to how each potential addition fits into the broader system. From the defensive line to the skill positions, every visit, every meeting, every report is part of a much larger puzzle that they're trying to piece together before draft night arrives. Another layer that makes this entire situation even more compelling is how timing plays such a huge role in every decision the Patriots are about to make. This isn't just about identifying talent. It's about understanding when to strike. The draft board never falls exactly the way teams expect, and that's where preparation meets instinct. If the right edge rusher is sitting there when their pick comes up, it could feel like an easy decision. But if that top tier is gone, everything shifts, and suddenly the front office has to decide whether to reach, trade, or pivot entirely. That's why those pre-draft visits matter so much. They're not just checking boxes, they're building contingency plans. For every player they love, there's another name right behind him on the board, and sometimes the difference between them is smaller than fans realize. From the outside, it might look like a surprise pick, but internally, it's part of a carefully structured plan that's been built over weeks, sometimes months. And when you think about how unpredictable draft night can be, having that level of preparation is what separates smart teams from desperate ones. There's also something to be said about experience versus raw potential, especially when you're talking about pass rushers. Some of these prospects have been in college football for several years, and that experience shows up in their awareness, their timing, and their ability to read plays before they fully develop. Others might be newer to the position or still developing physically, but they bring a level of explosiveness that's hard to teach. The Patriots seem to be evaluating both types very closely, which suggests they're open to different paths depending on how the board unfolds. And let's not ignore the mental side of the game, because that's always been a key factor for this organization. It's not just about what a player can do on the field, It's about how quickly they can adapt to a professional system, how they handle pressure, and how they fit into a locker room culture that demands accountability. Those are the details that don't show up in highlight reels, but they often determine whether a player succeeds or struggles at the next level. That's another reason why these visits are so valuable, because they give the team a chance to really understand who these players are beyond the stats. As the conversation continues to evolve, you can feel a growing sense that the Patriots are trying to avoid repeating past mistakes. There have been drafts where the fit didn't quite work, or where the development didn't happen as expected, and those lessons don't just disappear. They shape how decisions are made moving forward. That could explain why there's such a strong emphasis right now on players who bring both production and a clear role within the system. It's about reducing risk while still aiming for impact. At the same time, the possibility of a surprise move still lingers in the background. Every year, there's at least one pick that nobody sees coming, and the Patriots have never been afraid to go against the grain if they believe in a player. That's what makes trying to predict their draft strategy so challenging. You can follow the visits, study the needs, and analyze the roster, but there's always that element of unpredictability that keeps everything open. And then there's the broader vision of what this team wants to become. It's not just about fixing weaknesses, it's about creating strengths that can define their identity for the next few seasons. If they can build a dominant pass rush, that changes how opposing offenses prepare. If they can develop more consistency on offense, that takes pressure off the defense. Everything is connected, and the draft is one of the most important tools they have to shape that identity. You also have to consider how internal competition will evolve once these new players arrive. Adding talent doesn't just fill gaps, it raises the standard across the roster. Younger players are pushed to improve, veterans are forced to maintain their level, and suddenly the entire team becomes more competitive. That kind of environment can accelerate development in ways that go beyond individual performance, and it's something the Patriots have relied on in their most successful years. So as things continue to build toward draft night, the sense of anticipation only grows stronger. Every report, every rumor, every visit adds another piece to the puzzle, but the full picture is still coming together. And the closer we get, the more it feels like this draft could play a major role in defining not just the upcoming season, but the direction of the franchise as a whole. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to Patriots Hub and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest updates on our New England Patriots. And don't be shy, share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. Whispers are growing louder around Drake Maye and the New England Patriots, as insiders hint at rising tension following the unexpected departure of Stefon Diggs. While nothing has been confirmed publicly, sources close to the situation suggest that the young quarterback has delivered a firm message behind closed doors. If the franchise intends to build its future around him, it must act decisively and fast. Maye, who entered the National Football League with immense expectations after a decorated college career, is believed to be growing increasingly concerned about the lack of elite offensive weapons. The exit of DIGGS, a proven playmaker, appears to have intensified those concerns. According to league chatter, Maye has made it clear he does not want to spend crucial early years of his professional development without top-tier support. Those familiar with the locker room dynamic describe the quarterback as composed but assertive, a leader who understands both his value and the narrow window for success in the modern NFL. The speculation is that Maye has privately urged management to pursue high-caliber receivers and strengthen the offensive line, signaling that patience may not be unlimited. The Patriots, historically known for their disciplined and methodical approach, now face a delicate balancing act. Investing heavily in talent could accelerate their return to contention, but it also carries financial and strategic risks. Still, the idea of frustrating a quarterback with Maye's upside may be an even greater gamble. Around the league, executives are watching closely. Some believe this could be a defining moment for the franchise's direction, while others see it as a natural evolution of a young star asserting his influence. Either way, the message, real or exaggerated, has sparked intrigue. Drake may already be shaping the future in New England, and he might not be willing to wait quietly. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our New England Patriots, be sure to subscribe to Patriots Hub and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.